what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Antique Talk. Now, in today's episode, we're going to talk about reproductions. Now, when I first got into the antique business, I got screwed multiple times on reproductions. Buying something I thought was antique and it turned out to be a modern reproduction. So today I want to give you guys some tidbits that I've learned throughout the years to help me identify a reproduction from a antique item, as well as, situations I don't put myself in to make sure I don't, have a chance of getting screwed, because nowadays there's tons of reproductions out there and they're really good. They do really good jobs at reproducing old antique items. So I'm going to give you guys some of the tips I use, and hopefully that'll help you out. Now, we're also going to touch base on a couple of different categories of antiques as well, and how to not get screwed on those too. So, it's going to be a good episode, I think, that's going to be very educational for everybody, and hopefully some of you guys can learn from my mistakes and take some of these tips so you guys don't get screwed, and make sure you guys have, a great antique item you're picking up and something you can hold on to. So let's start off the video today. Identifying a reproduction is not an easy task. Reproductions have been in circulation for decades. So when they produce it in the 1950s, they might remake it in the 1980s. And when you buy it in 2021, you have to make sure that you're buying that 1950s piece and not that reproduced 1980s piece, because the value is drastically different. So it takes a lot of skill, knowledge, and experience to make sure you're buying that authentic piece. Now, these are just a few tidbits that I use when I go out and I try to buy antique pieces. All right, so first things first, trusting the person you're buying from. Now, you really need to consider the person as well as the environment that you're buying your antiques from. Now, when I say environment, I usually mean, where are you buying it from? Are you buying it from Facebook, a garage sale, antique store, a collector? And that's what we're going to talk about. So let's start off with Facebook Marketplace. Now, when I talked about in the intro of this video, I talked about having skill, knowledge, and experience when you're buying and selling antiques to help identify your reproductions. Now, the person you're buying from, do they have those three things? Now, in my experience on Facebook Marketplace, most people are just on there trying to make a quick penny, trying to flip items, trying to sell as quick as they could, or they're trying to turn it into an eBay where they're trying to make a ton of money off of items that aren't worth that much. Now, when I go to and I look at those three things like skill, experience, and knowledge, does this person I'm buying from have those three things? Now, if they don't, that's a red flag. So what I like to do is I like to just flood them with questions. I'm that guy that you guys hate to sell with on Facebook Marketplace, because I am asking questions all the time, because I want to make sure the item I'm buying is authentic. So if I can ask them a ton of questions and they have answers, and legit good answers for every question I have, that makes me feel more comfortable, and I can still definitely purchase the item, because I have before. I've definitely bought items that are antique on Facebook and they're authentic and they're great. But man, I surely asked 30 questions to make sure they are. So make sure you're doing that. And if they can't answer those questions, that is a red flag, and that is something I would definitely avoid. So Facebook Marketplace is probably the sketchiest places we're going to talk about when you're buying stuff, as well as this one. Garage sales is another one I'd like to talk about. And it really applies the same characteristics we did with Facebook Marketplace, because really it's just an extension of Facebook Marketplace. Does the person selling the items have the skill, knowledge, or experience? If they don't, and they can't answer the questions, I'm telling you, avoid it. It might be too good. It might be too good, and you're like, oh my God, I have to get this item. It might be too good to be true. I would pass. But again, if the item's cheap enough and you want to take the risk, I've done that too. For example, I bought a Ted Williams and a Stan Musial rookie card. Now, it turns out they're most likely going to be reprints and fakes. And I spent $20 a card, probably more than I should have spent. But I got caught up in it. I looked at them. I couldn't tell off the top of my head if they were real, authentic. I had another guy with me. He really couldn't tell either. So I took the chance. They were super, super cheap at auction. I should have been my red flag right there. But again, that's just one of the examples I hope you guys learn from, is that I've bought stuff that has not been real, and it just happens to work out that way. Now, the same as, like I said, that kind of sums up garage sales. I can kind of, lump garage sales and Facebook Marketplace together. If they don't have those kind of three characteristics we talk about, definitely pass. Now, next we're going to talk about is antique stores. Now, this is where it gets better. Now, does the dealer have the experience, the skill, and the knowledge? Yes, you don't know the dealer personally, but most of the time when antique stores bring dealers in, they make sure they are knowledgeable, skilled, and have experience in antique stores and being an antique dealer. So that makes me feel a lot more comfortable when I'm buying antiques. Now, most of these guys, have the knowledge, which means they put it usually on the tag. So they'll apply all the information possible on the tag so you feel more comfortable purchasing it. Now, I'm telling you guys, antique dealers don't want to sell repurposed items as an antique because that makes them look bad. That affects their sales. And if they look bad, it makes the store look bad, which affects the store's sales. I mean, it all goes downhill with that. So you really can have more confidence when you're buying at an antique store. And yes, I'm not saying you can't get screwed in an antique store. All these situations, I'm not saying you can't get screwed, guys. You can. But I'm telling you, you can feel more confident at a reputable antique store for that reason, because everybody there has the knowledge, they have the experience, and they have the skill to identify these. And so when they do sell a repurposed item, which again I have, or I'm sorry, not repurposed, a reproduction item, they market reproduction, so you know that, hey, I'm buying a reproduction because you guys, they do sell. Reproductions do sell. I've sold reproductions. There is a market for them. But I'm telling you, an antique store is going to be the best place to buy these items. Now, an auction, that's another hard one too, because again, yes, they have the skill, they have the knowledge usually, and they have the experience to identify these, but they don't really care what you're buying. This is the item. Hey, right here is what we're selling. You identify it, you look at all, I go to auctions all the time. It's, yours. You do the research, you do all the looking, and you figure out what it is, because we're just here to sell it. And that's their job, is they're there to sell it. So don't think that when they say it's an antique item that they know that. They're just there to sell the item. So make sure you have that research and you have that knowledge to help identify them, and that's what you need to do. So the last category we're going to talk about are the avid, experienced collectors. Now, when I buy something from them, that is where I feel the most confident buying something. Now, again, it's a specialty area. So if you're buying a Barbie collection from a Barbie collector, you can feel comfortable buying that, because when most of the time they have their collection, they want all those authentic pieces in their collection. So when you're buying from them, you know that, hey, this is exactly what his wheelhouse is. He knows exactly what he's doing. I can feel confident in what I'm buying here. And I've done that before too. I've bought sports card collections from guys that have been collecting for 30, 40, 50 years. And I know what I'm getting. I know this card right here is authentic. I know there's not an issue with this stuff. And I mean, it goes past authenticity, really. It goes to condition, authenticity. And you can feel confident in buying these things because they have the knowledge and they respect the collecting game so much that you can definitely buy something from them and feel safe. So those are just few of the examples that, you can get yourself into, knowing, yes, it's either a sketchy situation or it's a positive situation. And now I'm telling you, just because if it seems too good to be true, guys, I'm telling you, usually it is. So if you're seeing on Facebook Marketplace someone selling a $500 item for $100, I'm telling you, it should pop red flags in your head all the time. So make sure you guys do those things. Identify who's knowledgeable, who has the experience, and who has the skill, and then make your purchase smartly from there. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into is the appearance of an antique item. Now, the look of an antique can show several indications if the piece is authentic. Now, genuine pieces usually have representation of its longevity. Now, wear and tear contribute to the age of an item as well. So when you see an item that is a little beat up, has a little age to it, and you might think, oh, it's just junk. No, that's usually a good sign of age to it. Not all antique items are in pristine condition. So getting those pieces with that little bit of age to it is what we'll call it, that wear and tear, is actually a good thing. Now, you can also look for imperfections in symmetry, uneven surfaces, which usually shed a light on an item being made by a human or being made by a machine. So that is something you can definitely look at as well. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to hop into a few different categories of items and your best ways to help identify if you're looking at a reproduction or an authentic antique item. So let's get into those. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is antique furniture. And man, there is some gorgeous pieces of antique furniture out there. The first thing you want to look at is the type of wood being used on the furniture. Now, you have oak, mahogany, walnut, cherry, and maple that all can date back to the 17th century. So those are really good indicators of an antique piece of furniture. Now, plywood and particle board didn't start being used until the 1930s. So those pieces are going to be more indicator of a more modern piece of furniture. So right off the bat, looking at the type of wood being used is a good starting indicator on how old your piece of furniture is. Now, most antique furniture was hand sanded, and it really gave it that more rougher finish. So just running your hands along the exposed wood surface to see the smoothness is another thing you can use to help try to identify an antique piece, because that rougher finish is going to be a little more indication that, hey, it has a little bit of age to it. But again, I know some buyers and sellers do buy and refinish items and whatnot. So that is just something you want to make sure you look into as well. And hopefully you put all these pieces together and help identify your piece of furniture. Now, the screws and nails are another indicator of age, because screws were handmade until 1880 when machines took over. So looking for little to no taper, a misaligned slot head, and shallow spirals are a good indicator of older screws being used, which would identify it as being an older piece of furniture. Now, square cut nails were used until the early 1900s, when round nails and staples took over. So again, identifying those square nails, again, another great indicator of an antique piece. And if you start adding these pieces together, you'll be able to really get to the point of you'll be able to you'll be able to identify the age of the piece. Now, if you see extensively glued pieces opposed to pieces that use joints, that is a great indicator of a newer piece. Obviously, if you're seeing a lot of glue on there, that is not antique. Again, a very easy way to tell if a piece is old or new. Now, if you see thicker veneer, that also indicates an older piece, because nowadays they use that paper thin veneer, but that old antique piece would use those thicker pieces of veneer, as you guys can see here, that really would help you identify it being a lot older compared to the newer counterpart. Now, wood also darkens when it gets with age, as well as exposure. So that's another thing you can check on as well, but always make sure that the seller didn't refinish it as well. So you'll have to smell it. If it smells like varnish, you have to do the smell test and know that maybe that they refinished it and revarnished it or restained it. So that's definitely something you can look into. So hopefully you can use all these pieces we talked about with antique furniture to help identify how old it is, or if it's antique or its newer counterpart. So let's get on to the next category. Okay, so the next three categories we're going to talk about, you can actually purchase a tool that can help you indicate whether it's an old or a new piece of these categories. It's a blacklight flashlight. Now, if you ever go to an antique store and you see people with flashlights flashing all the stuff in a booth, that is what they're doing. They're trying to help identify age. I see it all the time at our shop. So the first item we're going to talk about is porcelain. Now, you use a black light, you can help determine the age of porcelain. Now, hard paste porcelain will fluorescent a deep blue or purple, which means it's a more modern piece. Now, soft paste porcelain, which is more delicate, will glow white, which will indicate an antique piece. Now, also, you can identify repairs using a black light as well. Now, you have to be pretty intricate on, flashing that black light on there, but it'll help identify if there was any glue used, because the glue will fluorescent as well. So that is something that is a great tool to use. Now, there is actually a funny little thing I know of people that used to do it, to identify repairs in porcelain. They used to put their lips around the edges of the porcelain pieces, like plates or cups or whatever, to figure out if there was any repairs. Now, I don't recommend doing that. I think that's weird, but I had multiple people that would come into our shop and they would let us know that they used to do that, before they started using the black light. So again, just another thing I want to share with you guys in our experiences and some of the weird stories we hear. But yeah, people, running their lips across the edges of porcelain to figure out if there's any cracks or imperfections. So definitely something I wanted to let you know. All right, so the next category we're going to talk about is upholstery. Now, polyester will glow under a black light, and since they weren't used until after the 1920s, those objects are not old. So if you can use those black lights and shine it on the upholstery, and if it does grow that polyester like that, you'll know it's a newer piece of upholstery. Now, prior to the 1920s, upholsterers used horsehair and hay. So if you push your finger gently onto the cushion, it should feel bristly and it shouldn't spring back. So that's going to be a great indicator too of how old your piece of upholstery is. So, those are just great tips to use. Now, if there's a mix of old and new materials, that's usually a sign of repair. And again, not always that it's a bad thing. I've bought pieces of furniture that were just bare bones, and we've actually, recushioned and reupholstered them. I mean, there's so many options out there you can deal with those. But if you do see that mix of old and new, I mean, that's obviously an indicator of a purpose that has been repurposed or refinished. So definitely want to keep that in mind. All right, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is glass. Now, first thing you want to do is to look for the maker's mark, because that's going to help identify age. You know, and a lot of those books, like we've talked about in our Collecting 101 videos, you can look up these books like Fenton books or depression glass books. Finding those maker marks is going to help determine if it's actual, you know, an actual authentic piece, a remake, or just, you know, whatever age it is that you can help identify. Now, colorless pressed glass is made before the 1930s and at a fluorescent yellow. So that is another good indication too, you know, of age. I mean, like I said, these black lights, man, I'm telling you, they are a lifesaver. Now, Vaseline and depression glass will glow a greenish color as well. Now, I think we've all talked about this before with the uranium glass. When people, you know, go to that with a black light, we have a bunch of displays at our store where people use black lights as the display because that fluorescence off that uranium glass, and it's just some of my favorite stuff. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now, antiques usually don't look smooth and flat, so when you see stuff like that, you see it on an angle and you see those edges, again, more of a determination of age as well. Now cut glass is that sharp to touch. Now, again, that's another thing compared to that pressed glass, that cut glass where it's a little sharper, a little edges aren't perfect, more indications of age. You know, anything more, everybody nowadays wants a smooth, beautiful finish. That's a more modern piece, and that's a more modern style. That antique stuff, man, that's why we love it. It's rough, it's rugged. You know, it can poke you a little bit, and you're like, you know, but it's that piece. I just love it, man. The antique furniture and some of this stuff is just some of my favorite things. So yeah, guys, those are just a few categories that I touch base on to help identify, you know, reproductions versus, you know, newer items. So guys, that's the video today. I hope this gives you guys a good indication of what to look for. Now, like we talked about in the beginning, and I'm sorry, I'm a broken record on this, guys, because that's how I remember things, but it's knowledge, it's skill, and it's experience. Always use those three things when you're looking for, you know, buying reproduction or buying items from people to help determine reproductions versus new. You know, and when you hop into different categories, I just touched on 4 of them. I touched on the furniture, the porcelain, the upholstery, and the glass. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty more I could get into. I know there's cast iron is another thing that's widely reproduced. And, you know, there's so many other things I get into. So if it's something you guys are interested in, and me getting into more of reproductions versus authentic items and ways to identify them, I will gladly do it. I have no problems doing that. Just let me know in the comment section below. So I really hope you guys learned a lot from this video. Again, if there's any more questions, throw them in the comment sections. I'm always ready to answer them. So thank you guys again for watching. If you guys want to smash that thumbs up button down there, and again, in the comment section, let's hear any kind of questions you have about authentic reproduction items. Have you guys been screwed before? Let's hear those stories, because I mean, I've been multiple times. So don't think you're alone. Trust me, this is a good group, and it's a good community to get together and, you know, share our experiences together. And even if I missed anything, add that into the comment section too, because I mean, any more information we all can get to help identify these authentic to reproduction pieces, that's going to help everybody out, and it makes this, you know, this community that we're building together, it makes it that much stronger. So let's do that as well, and let's throw that in the comment section. And if you guys get some time and you enjoy the content, man, let's smash that subscribe button. Lots of people out there really need this information. So subscribe, tell your friends, let them know that, hey, we got this great community going on that's, you know, trying to help everybody out, hopefully in collecting and reselling and, you know, just antiques in general, because it's such an amazing, amazing life to be into. So thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'm going to go with our store catch line. If you guys get some time and you guys have questions about antiques, repurposed items, anything like that, come out and see me or Amber. We're always at the shop, and get your antique fix on M66. See you guys later.